Here we go.
Let's head over to segment 2, which is all about what we affectionately are calling the Nintendo Rollercoaster. Now, hang on, before you close the browser window, this is a segment where we're basically going to come at the Nintendo Switch, the device itself. Last week, we talked a little bit about the presentation and sort of how we felt, but now it's coming at, okay, now that everything we see is out there, all the information we have out there, how do we feel about Switch? And we're going to name one good thing, and we're going to name one concerning thing. I think that's really important for us to do.
I hope they put a Nintendo roller coaster in their theme park.
Woo!
Has
Get
all
ready.
these predictions on it.
We'll see. But who wants to kick it off? Because I asked everyone to kind of list theirs, and I actually didn't get to list mine because I was waiting.
Right,
so I'm going to go
mine,
last.
So you get some
You're
time.
changing yours. So you're going to lead off.
Are we doing?
Should we roller coaster's already down for maintenance.
Roller coaster. I'm picking track 2 right now. So what? Like bad thing first? Bad thing first, good thing then? Like
Start with a good thing.
Start with a good thing. Let's kick it off positive.
Everybody's been beating up on
All right.
Yeah, and everybody loves the good news. When someone's like good news or bad news, you want to hear
All
the
right, I'm gonna say hardware. Because I've just kind of reading feedback and people are equating this device to the power of an Xbox One or a PS4, which of course it does not deliver that same sort of oomph. I actually think they got a lot right with the hardware. First of all, there's the kind of the attractiveness factor of a piece of hardware that you look at and you just want to mess around with. And like consoles can be really boring boxes, right? They can be very boring to interact with. They built this kind of cool mechanic with the docking and the sliding of the controllers. Like all of that kind of stuff appeals to me. Like I just want to take it. I want to take it out there and I want to play with this thing.
It's got that sort of tangible nature to it where you just want to pick it up, which I think when you look at the design of the Wii U, the gamepad itself was like kind of chunky and funny looking, but the console itself was probably the most boring looking video game console ever made. Yeah. It was just like this like weird like oval, square, rectangle. It was just like, oh, that's fun.
Whereas like I look at this machine and it's different. Like it's just like there's no other device like it. Like my iPad doesn't look like that. My iPad can't do the weird stuff with the controllers. And so when you then drill down, like obviously, power-wise, it's not going to live up to these other machines, but it's respectable, right? Like if you think of a beautiful Wii U game like Mario Kart 8, and then you put it on a screen and you take it with you, there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that, right?
Oh, and I will say that like every demo station I went to, I was compelled to constantly take controllers off, put them back on.
You want to hold it.
It didn't
wax on,
matter.
wax
like
off.
even if I was just I'd done it like 3 other stations ago, it was still like this impulse of like, okay, new demo station, rip them off, okay, put them in the dock, all right, play with the grip, all right, put them back on, okay, take up the like you can't help it. You kind of get wrapped up in wanting to constantly do it.
And then with the please, I mean, Wayne, the other attractiveness factor, like the other thing about the hardware is just the versatility, and like it can be quite overwhelming, right? Like if you remember the Wii U days, you had all these different controllers, and it can be daunting. And I think this one slims it down. It still has a lot of plastic pieces, but I love how versatile it is. That like it can convert into this travel system where you instantly have a 2-player setup, which we never had with Vita, right?
Yeah,
like you take your Vita out, it's a solitary experience no matter what. With this thing, they're really encouraging that kind of communal playing, and you can easily set it up. Like if you're with your buddy on the bus, you can just hand him a controller, and like there's
no
think about
sensor
it.
bar with a 30-foot cable, and there's no like weird little like nunchuck with a dongle on, like all those funny like ropes you had just sitting in your drawers after the Wii and the Wii U.
When was the last time a console came with 2 controllers?
Effectively.
Right?
Famicom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
it's been a really long. That's really.
You didn't have a choice with the original Famicom. They were
hardwired in. But
and I'll get to my bad thing in a second, but like also when you just take the Joy-Con, the little gamepad, which is of course that's the on-the-go solution to turn it sideways, but there's a lot of stuff in that thing. And just like it doesn't have analog triggers like, the PlayStation or the Xbox One controller would. It does have a battery, unlike the Xbox One controller, though, right? Like you don't have to pay extra for that, and you have 2 of them in the pack, of course. But man, the HD Rumble, I think it's very clever that we're experimenting with it. On the Xbox, I love the Rumble triggers, right? That was a cool innovation for me. On the PlayStation controller, I like the touchpad, but this one has NFC in it, and it has that IR camera in it, which we have not seen in a controller like that before. You know,
and it's probably the source of the wackiest things you'll ever do with this thing, from
Yep.
your hand shape and where like it is in proximity to it, to even did you see that 1-2 switch game where you're holding it up
Yeah.
and sort of nibbling at a sandwich? Well,
eating
you're not
sandwich?
nibbling,
Yeah.
you're just straight up chomping.
Yeah, we
at a
had that.
sandwich.
We had that running on the live stream here in like the editorial pit in IGN, and we're all just like, "What are we doing with our lives? Like this is incredible."
But what that, and to me as an age-old Nintendo fan who loved the wackiness of Nintendo experiments like WarioWare Twisted, like when I see all these little things that they built into these Swiss Army knives, like I get excited as to what they can do with it. Now, you know, that doesn't protect them from, like, they need to convince other developers to use these tools in a smart way that it's not annoying, because remember Waggle, right? Like any motion was turned into Waggle even if it didn't have to, and that's terrible. But I hope companies have grown up and are using these features for good rather than just because they're there. So I'm really excited about
I totally
the
agree
hardware.
with that. I think there's an interesting sort of like jack of all trades thing that the controllers are doing right
Yep.
now. I'm hoping it's not like a master of none. The cost of that is obviously being passed down to the consumer, and if those aren't effectively used by any developers, then you're basically spending $80 for controllers that you might not get to utilize every cool aspect of. But there is a lot of great ideas in them, and I hope it sort of sparks some creativity in developers to do cool and crazy stuff, because that's when Nintendo's at their best.
Yep.
I just hope that at the same time there is the expectation from the audience that not every. I feel like we've seen Nintendo introduce ideas to their platforms. You know, we had like 3D, for example, being a major selling point for 3DS. We had, you know, the Wii Motion Plus, which was eventually like the redone Wii remote, like the way it should have been from the start.
patch.
But, yeah, but we got there. Like we got to the point where the technology was cheap and we can put that out. And then slowly they built it into everything. But one thing that you have noticed too when Nintendo has these experiments is that I feel like the expectations for how often they should use them and what they should use them for are all over the place from their fans.
Yeah.
I feel like the minute there were games they were putting out on digital shops that they were not no 3D supported, something like Box Boy, it becomes, well, then why is this here?
Yeah.
You know, or etc. Like you can even point to, I'm pretty sure, plenty of other like tiny experiments the company has tried where they kind of just put their hands up because they didn't want to force it. There were times where they did and there were times where they didn't. But I feel like then it became this huge talking point. Well, then why is it here?
But then there's also times when it is there and it actually hinders the overall scope of what the final product could have been. I look at something like Star Fox, which came so late in the game of like experimenting with dual screen gaming, that I think that some of that kind of got in the way of what would have been a more, it's like kind of more classic arcadey traditional game. Same with Paper Mario. So, but you know, it's tough,
that
right?
was the screen on the Wii U gamepad was that console's feature. That was the big differentiating factor. I don't feel like the differentiating factor here is that it has, you know, distinct marbles and a controller rumble or anything. Those are just kind of like the bells and whistle on top that hopefully inspire developers.
And that's what I want
right?
people to see.
And I like that about
Yeah,
that machine.
I like that about
The
it.
core conceit of this machine is same experience on the go that you're getting at home. And guess what? That experience at home is better than what you got on the Wii U.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty amazing feat to pull that off as a handheld,
Yeah,
right? Like when
what
the
better-
Vita came out, we didn't say, oh, these graphics are so crappy, right? Like we're like, man, this is a nice device with a bright OLED screen.
Yeah.
And like it was just a cool device. Ultimately, it was undone by the software support, right? And
No,
hopefully
and
we're
what
not
better
seeing
game
that here.
to live up to what you're talking about than Zelda Breath of the Wild at launch.
Totally.
Regardless of it being a Wii U game, it is very much a game that no portable platform that I can think of has executed something like that.
Yeah.
Like that is so cool.
I mean, even if it's a feature like the HD Rumble that's only used in one game, but if that experience really pulls you into that game, then you know it's worth it, right? To
Mission
Dave's point.
accomplished.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't need to have every single game have HD Rumble. I just need it for someone who it's part of their vision in terms of what they want to make in the game, and they use it.
It was like playing Twilight Princess, where I was like, okay, like the waggle's not doing it for me,
Right.
but pointing is.
Yeah.
Like, the pointer controls in that game were phenomenal, and being on day one, being like, I'm shooting arrows and hook shots with pointer controls. I remember like that Sky Temple where you have dual hook shots.
And you
right?
heard
And
the
I was like,
sound come from the
yeah,
controller.
you heard
to
that.
the
There was something
TV.
I'm
really
catching
special
bugs.
about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
yeah, really cool
that's
stuff.
really dope.
Yeah.
All right, you're bad.
So that was the good. And by the way, there are a couple of like I did a little controller comparison between all the different controllers. Like there are differences, right? Like the Switch controller does not have a speaker like that. What you just described from the Wii, you couldn't do on there. Whereas you know the PlayStation one has obviously has lights and a speaker, and the Xbox One and the PS4 one have like a direct low latency mode when you plug it into USB. We don't know enough about this, but we do know that they don't have a USB port on them, right?
The speaker thing directly.
20 hours on battery
The
life.
speaker thing
That's-
directly bums me out about Suda announcing a new No More Heroes game because I want to be able to answer my phone at the game. That was awesome.
Well,
that
they
was
do.
so cool.
They can simulate you picking it up with the IR stuff now. But so the bad is inevitably it's a no-brainer. It's price, right? $300 is a lot for a handheld device. It's not a lot for a console, but it is a lot when you compare it to the other two machines out on the market, where you obviously an Xbox starts at like $250. So price is a concern, but I think more price when you really take in all the other little things that you have to pay for. Like the dock priced at $80 is not okay to me, right? Like
I thought it was 90.
not 90.
Yeah.
So a
90.
dock, not everybody needs a dock, and so maybe it becomes this luxury item for people with two TVs.
Clearly,
but,
at $90 is luxury.
right? But 90 is stupid because the actual machine costs you $300, right? And like you really got to start thinking at that price point. But it's more like all the little things on top of it, right? Like if you want to do a wired connection, you're going to need the USB wired adapter. If you want to charge your controller when it's not attached to the device, you're going to have to buy the charge grip for $30 because the grip included is not a charger, right? Like all those little things.
Pro controller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pro
$70
controllers is
Yeah.
that's very expensive compared
Pre-order
to
now.
the $59 DualShock 4 and the Xbox One S controller, which are both really, really good controllers, by the way.
Right.
Not as much as an Elite controller or something, but obviously, it's a lot. Now, that said, a full package, a Switch with 4 controllers, if you're willing to go small, is actually a lot cheaper than buying an Xbox or a PlayStation 4 with 4 controllers. Again, Xbox doesn't have chargeable battery packs either, right? And so when you stack them up against each other, it's not that the Switch is outrageously priced when you go for a full 4-player setup, but it's just a hard pill to swallow. I think when you look at the power of the machine when you connect it to a TV compared to the others.
But it is also understanding, just the convenience of what it is. Because I feel like in the comparisons to platforms, I mean, those other two, when you go out on a trip, they stay home.
Yep.
Like, and that's where they're going to be. And you can do all the wireless remote connection you can. And some of the technology on that stuff has progressed and it's been cool. But at the end of the day, that's still not a thing that you took with you. And I think that is a very special selling point for this thing.
Yep.
I've seen some folks suggest, will they ever separate those two things? I don't think that's a reality for them. I think that the Switch concept is home, portable, and tabletop mode, which was weird, but that's a third mode, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring that out.
I've seen a lot of price comparisons to the Xbox One controller, to the DualShock 4. The DualShock 4 is probably my favorite video game controller of all time. It's just fantastic. But the battery life on it is like 5 hours. And on the Switch Pro controller, it's like 40, and it's got NFC built in. So you're paying $10 more. It's actually weird to me that the Pro controller on the Switch lasts 40 hours and the unit itself lasts 2.5. Like, I wish those two could talk to each other. Be like, dude, how are you lasting so long?
Beaming power over.
I think
some battery tips.
I think 2.5 will definitely be the bottom of like playing on Wi-Fi in a multiplayer game. I think you'll get more playtime out of it. Yeah.
I think where the 300 is actually going to hurt even more is the fact that it is a portable device. It's probably going to be breakage, or you're going to lose a controller, right? I mean, you can't walk down the block without getting an iPhone repair shop. So people are going to be dropping that thing, especially with kids. You're going to be losing Joy-Cons. So that's what kind of worries me. It's like, this thing's $300. We'll throw it into a bag, but some people going to be where are you doing
I think the
that,
costs
right?
start stacking up very quickly. When you look at the console itself, $299. I'm still kind of bummed it doesn't come with a pack-in game or anything like that. But to have the console itself and have the Joy-Cons and the grip, which is, by the way, the grip is such a weird thing that it doesn't actually charge. But they sell one that does. And the only way to get this thing is in the system itself. You can't buy that thing piecemeal, like a non-charging grip. So Nintendo is effectively selling you this piece of hardware, this peripheral that doesn't exist outside of its own containment unit. I find that very odd.
There'll be third-party grips, I'm sure.
But I mean, you get the console for $299 plus, tax, shipping, all that other stuff, whatever you need. And all of a sudden you buy the Pro controller, maybe you want the charging grip, maybe you buy some other stuff. You're looking at like $500 all of a sudden.
Day one.
And that's without a game. So.
It'll add, and that's, I think that's where the comparison is unfavorable, because if you go back to when the Vita came out and you look at the Vita, it's like, the Vita didn't have the option to expand that way, and so it never looked as daunting and as expensive. And so what Nintendo is doing now is they keep on saying, no, it's a console, right? Like when people say, well, but it's different, it's a handheld, and look how good the graphics are for a handheld, Nintendo still has to say, no, it's a console because they want to justify the high price. And
I feel like it's like when you're on the highway and there's like a motorcycle that goes in like the other lane. It's like, I'm a bike. And then it's like, I'm a car again. And the cop's like, I just want to pull you over and give you a ticket.
Yep.